So this talk is on the evolution and impact of AI and how it's transforming creativity in operations. And I wanted to get under a little bit and have a look at some real world cases of AI in operation to take away from some of the hype, and also to have a look at what the role of creativity plays in this human AI kind of collaboration. So this talk will take us through about 8 case studies where I'll show some short videos which kind of help us think about the art of what's possible. So first of all, I'll just kick off with a very short intro. Who is V? I'm V, I'm from Perth, which is the West Coast. I was the National Director for Avanade when I put the talk submission in. I'm now the CISO for Fortescue, and I'll borrow from the organisations I've been in with some of the stories of some of the things that we've implemented. I've got a background mostly in the intersection between cybersecurity and AI, and I've worked with a lot of developers with secure by design principles, leading large teams. Huge fan of Lego serious play. Live in my head, or probably a metre above my head, and so I choose to do things outside my work life that take me back to my body, which is skating, surfing and swimming in the early hours of the morning. And that's really important because in high pressure roles, it's important to connect with our body to kind of check in to know how we're tracking. So a little bit about me, my background. Been in IT 30 years in lots of different roles. And I think as we come into this era, and I call it the post-COVID era, and Fortune, there was a study that said 52% of the Fortune 500 companies have actually gone into liquidation, or they've ceased to exist in the last few years, which basically means that survival depends upon adaptation, and it also depends upon creativity. And I like the definition of creativity that Natalie Nixon uses, which is combining wonder and also rigour. And I think in the work that we do in IT, we've gotten very good at the rigour and the execution. And now it's time to start to do more of the I wonder, the imagination part of things. So I think leaders are really looking to balance those ideas. And we've seen post-COVID a lot of disruption in the physical world, some of that driven by what's going on in the climate. But we've also seen a lot of developments in the algorithmic world, in AI, robotics, artificial reality, and all of those things, and augmentation. So one thing we know is that our world is becoming more reliant on tech, and tech is ubiquitous. But also we know that disruption is also going to continue. And one thing we can control is actually our creative capacity, and creativity is that engine for innovation. So I want to little kind of experiment a bit with some thinking about that. So 3 things I'll cover off, and I'll cover off the first one at the speed of light, because Stephen talked about some of that this morning in the opening keynote. And then I want to talk about creativity and innovation and what that means in this age of AI. And in some of the case studies I'll share, we see this really interesting relationship between the imagination, the creativity, and the use of AI. And then I'll also pose some ideas for the future. So the World Economic Forum did a study, and it said that creativity was the second most important skill needed for the period 2030 and beyond. And the other 2 skills that are really important is problem solving and analytical thinking. And all of those are kind of part of that build-up of creativity. And that sort of shapes this perspective about why it's so important. Because I kind of get tired of people saying to me, oh, I would really like AI to be more creative. And as we know, AI has some calculating capabilities, but the responsibility of creativity is actually on us, the humans. So it's combining the two of those together, which is really important. We want human creativity with the calculating power of AI. So just a couple of things that I'll say about AI. And the first is that it's like having access to this massive brain that exists. It's not perfect. It's actually quite flawed, but it has enormous potential. And we've seen it changed and think and learn as it's gotten more and more powerful. And the second thing I'll just point out, because I think it's important to have a few definitions right at the front end. We've been using AI for probably 1 or 2 decades. It's kind of embedded into a lot of the systems we use, how we choose a movie, banks using it with fraud detection and all of those sorts of things. And the more recent ability of the generative capacity is really around that creative capacity is expanded. And the large language model is really that personal, natural language connection in to AI. And I'll talk about each of those. So the core idea behind every revolution, some would say is technology, but I would say it's actually creativity. And if we look at the first revolution we saw, which was around fire, that revolution allowed us to sit around, to share knowledge, and to tell stories, and that became the first idea of this collective kind of intelligence. And then with agriculture, we shaped this idea of planning and linking that with our predictive capacity becoming born. And then with printed press, we saw the ability then to take that knowledge and to share it even further. The first automation we saw was actually in the steel industry. And then finally through telecommunications, we saw that we could actually communicate at a distance. And each of these moments was creative, and it laid the foundation for artificial intelligence. Now, we heard this morning from Stephen that we heard about the imitation games and also about artificial intelligence and Alan Turing. And I would say, be a little bit more provocative and say that AI wasn't born or invented by a single individual, but it was launched by an agreement on a methodology and a vision that many, many people have had. And that kind of shared vision was that computers could do tasks and perform very intelligent tasks. And I'll go right back to 1830, and Ada Lovelace was the first computer programmer, and she said the following. She said that she saw the analytical machine could create almost anything beyond its abilities as a big calculator. And she said, suppose the engine might compose elaborate and scientific pieces of music of any degree of complexity or extent. And so she predicted this development of general purpose computers almost 200 years ago. And I find that really interesting. I live at the moment with one of my children, young adults, is a singer-songwriter. And when I think of the way he uses AI in songwriting, I think of what Ada Lovelace kind of envisaged, way back in 1830, that it would be possible. And then, we've got all these great minds that helped shape things from Alan Turing through to Grace Hopper, to John McCarthy, Marvin Minsky, Fifi Lee, Andrew Ning, Jeffrey Hamilton and Cynthia Brazil. And so the history is one of a collective journey emphasising collaboration and vision rather than a kind of a singular kind of methodology. And so I'm going to start also looking at this as generative AI being the catalyst for crossing this adoption chasm. So we all probably remember the web browser moment. Well, this is the kind of the equivalent when generative AI came through. We are now witnessing AI's browser moment, where this technology is now so user-friendly that we can go from experimentation to mainstream adoption very quickly. And we have, I call this slide the whiplash effect. And for it to take 3 months to reach 100 million users compared to 16 years for mobile phones, 7 years for the internet, and 4.5 years for Facebook. And I think I kind of reflect on this idea. AI is useless, no one's actually using it. Well, it's actually now the 8th most visited website globally, and it's done that from almost nothing in a few years. And it continues to evolve, and the curve continues to evolve at that speed with multimodal, improved reasoning, advanced reasoning capabilities continuing to kind of pick that curve further up. And I really like just a caption from this video, so I'll share it, that AI has the potential to transform things, but it also has the potential to solve problems we haven't previously been able to solve. And this video is sourced from Microsoft.
We're using AI to update maps of communities around the world to help ensure they receive the essential resources they need, to understand where people and structures are located so we can better prepare for and respond to natural disasters. We can even use AI to assist doctors in early diagnosis of these diseases to help people live longer, healthier lives. In some cases, AI isn't just a solution, but is the only solution we have. Though we have learned and accomplished so much, there are still so many more opportunities to improve the lives of people around the world. We hope you join us in using AI for good.
And then I contrast that with this quote, which I really like, from Natalie Nixon, and she says, what the world needs is creative hybrid thinkers who are asking the big questions about what technology can do for us and are also willing to undergo the rigour to find some of those answers. I took this photo about a decade ago in France at the Musée d'Orsay, and for me it signals a moment, and time isn't really measured by clocks but by these moments we have with those that we love. And as we entered the top floor of the Musée d'Orsay, my son ran up and looked out the window. And for me, it's this image that we are moving away from the industrial age, one that was mechanical and driven by clocks, to the digital age now, and we are looking to the future. And if we look to what the writers, the philosophers, the physicists have done, we know there's a couple of things that we need to do, and why creativity and that kind of visioning becomes really, really important in the future. So there's 3 kind of insights that come to us. We need to amplify what makes us human. We need to design for this rigour and wonder. We need to lead with questions, not answers, to solve some of the difficult problems we're facing into. So we know that technology is really evolving quickly, but our creativity remains timeless. So AI can crunch the data, it can imagine the bold new strategies to foster human connection and to inspire trust. But creativity belongs to us, and it's our core asset. And I think about the new technology with AI, similar to the technology of X-ray, and if you remember around the 1900s, the novelty of it was so exciting. It was in every lecture, it was in every circus, it was entertainment and used for very speculative purposes. It was captured in the media. Someone was talking about the power of X-rays, and they said, you can see other people's bones. And they were horrified that you could see people's bones with the naked eye, and reflecting on the revolting indecency of this, that there's no need to dwell. And shortly after, we saw that lots of people who started to experiment also became very sick, and they developed cancer, and some died. And the technology then rapidly refocused on medical purposes where the benefit outweighs the risk, and doctors started using lead aprons and all of those sorts of things. And so some of the lessons coming out of that requires us to consider not only the what of what can it do, but why and how. And I'm looking at some of the case studies, and the first one is from the CSIRO and the testing that they've done with the AEHRC, where they've actually looked at some very comprehensive testing for AI and medical imaging. And so you can actually test this yourself. It's the analyst demo, web demo, and you can upload your own images, and it will then provide you an analysis of the images that have been sent through. Now, what's really interesting is a Swedish study's been done recently, and it shows that when radiologists actually worked with AI, their traditional screening capability was improved by 30%. And that improved detection came while also reducing the radiologist workload. And it also had an impact on some of the false positive rates as well, which raises a really ethical kind of question. AI wasn't working alone. AI was working with a medical team, but the combined impact of the two working together was a 30% increase in detection. What happens if we know this and we don't use AI? Will we see the first lawsuit where someone actually challenges someone who misses something in a diagnosis because they didn't use AI? It poses some really interesting kind of ethical questions as the technology develops to such a point that it is now detecting stuff that we can't without it. Later I'll show you a similar case study around the work it does for security analysts who face the same kind of issue that radiologists face, and that is that the work is so kind of demanding that we need the skills to actually support people to prevent burnout in these fields. So it has not only a qualitative benefit on quality of life, but also a quantitative and measurable benefit as well. I'm going to now go to the first case study, and this is from a really interesting piece of work that was put out, and it's called The Partnership of AI Beyond the Code. This piece of research looks at the work that Professor Kelly Chibale is doing, who's a leading figure who's actually using AI in a really interesting way to revolutionise medical research.
My name is Kelly Chibale. I am a professor of organic chemistry at the University of Cape Town. We want to contribute solutions that are in the best interest of humanity. Imagine a world where medicines are tailored to the genetic makeup of an individual. I am funded as an AI 2050 Senior Fellow by Schmidt Sciences to use AI to tailor drugs, considering the unique genetic diversity of the African patient population. We need to address the low numbers of clinical trials that happen in the African continent. But we also need to address the absence of tools and models in the discovery phase of the process.
So we're just still trying to figure that out.
So we can very accurately predict which ones to make. So we are using AI to leapfrog this barrier of limited data and use what we call transfer learning from other areas to be able to then predict which genes are going to affect which drug. My name.
And then moving on to a case study around sustainability in Australia, water management is a huge part of dealing with the scarce resources we've got. A very interesting study's been done by Kohler, which applied AI to optimise irrigation, and they achieved a 20% increase in irrigation efficiency while also boosting crop yields by 20 to 30%. So that's really massive. What we see that we're both saving water, which is a precious resource, and also getting more food output at the same time. And the system uses AI to analyse real-time data and generate recommendations on exactly when and how much water to which crop is required. So in practice it might say field 7 needs 10 mils of water tonight, but no irrigation for field 3 because the rain's coming tomorrow. And by generating these kinds of insights, it prevents under or over watering, which is a really interesting application, both for its productivity but also the benefit on us, on the environment. In my work in Perth, one of the things that I do, I sit on the Insight Awards in Western Australia, which is the Innovation Awards, and this really amazing project came forward, which actually serves remote communities living in the West Australian Pilbara. It's called the Healthy Connections Mobile Kit, and I just wanted to showcase the application of generative AI within a medical solution to serve a really underrepresented and underserved population in Australia.
The Healthy Connections Mobile Medikit is transforming healthcare delivery in the Pilbara by enhancing accessibility and equity. This AI-driven, satellite-enabled screening tool is portable, allowing healthcare workers to bring the clinic directly to the community on country. By facilitating on-site chronic disease screenings, the Medikit helps prevent conditions such as heart disease, diabetes and renal disease, ultimately improving health outcomes in these communities.
We're developing a Medikit which would allow us to undertake point-of-care health assessments at events like the festival and in remote Mardu communities. The Medikit provides a whole-of-community, lifetime approach to reducing chronic disease in a culturally safe and appropriate way. On-country screening will allow us to identify people at risk early, provide education and connect them with health services and follow-up. This will help reduce the burden of chronic disease on Aboriginal communities.
One of the major features of the Medikit is its portability. We can take the Medikit to anyone's house, to a community, to an event. And this portability allows us to provide access to healthcare where it may not be possible before.
I'm a nurse out here in the Pilbara. Out here we have a variety of different clients, and for different reasons they don't want to come into the hospital and other health services.
So to have an all-in-one Medikit to take out to community actually helps me deliver kinship care in a much more accessible and equitable way.
The Pilbara is known for its natural beauty and rich resources. It's also home to traditional owners who experience some of the lowest health equity in Australia. By introducing this digital health technology, the Medikit will help close the technology gap for Aboriginal communities.
And they went on to receive an award locally in Western Australia and then a national award, which is remarkable, and they've now got these kits in action in the Pilbara, which is amazing. And it meets a number of objectives, providing point of health care. It's culturally sensitive. It's got seamless integration with telehealth. It's got robust connectivity as well, which is a challenge in really remote locations. And it's enhanced with AI technology. And it also allows for us to capture the history of people and their medical requirements and provide, just the right level of medical support and awareness just in time. Stepping on now to have a look at another project in the Pilbara. I'm currently the CISO at Fortescue, and we've been using artificial intelligence. It's a really important part of our strategy. We've got an AI program to optimise operations, to drive innovation and to improve safety and efficiency. And it also is a business connectivity tool, and it's allowing us to make better decisions through data-driven insights. So I'll share this video and then have a look at some of the different projects that are being used. We've got two types of projects on the go at the moment. We've got breakthrough AI, and we've also got a number of AI at scale projects, and we've got about 600 developers working on AI programs and automation programs in the organisation. And they do a number of different significant projects, particularly related to the processing of minerals, but also related to the conversion of traditional ways of mining to more sustainable practices. So I'll share this video. This is a publicly available video, and it doesn't share any sensitive or unique company secrets. So here we go. You would have seen that operation which exists in Perth, which is the mine operation, and it actually serves the mine 24 hours a day. And one of the really interesting things about bringing that operation to an autonomous, also powered by the capabilities of AI, is the sort of demographic operating that technology has meant that more women have been able to enter a traditionally very masculine kind of environment, which has been really very interesting. And I think there's also some very interesting sustainability goals there around how AI can help us achieve some of the optimisation within the mine, and how we enhance the operations as well. There's been some very interesting projects. And I said earlier, I'm living with a creative at the moment, a singer-songwriter, and this is my son John, who was on Australian Idol last month. Living with someone who's a creative kind of keeps reminding me about how difficult the creative process is. And I watch the oscillation of that kind of creative process. And creativity often looks like frustration. And as a parent, parenting a young person through this kind of creative process, I have to almost step back and let the frustration happen, because out of the frustration comes really interesting insight. I can also tell you that the moments for innovation are actually happening when he's not actually at the desk. They're happening when he's in the shower, when he's in the garden, when he's walking. So it's a very interesting thing about what's the environment that we need for innovation to happen, and toggling periods of work with periods of kind of rest for the brain in order for that creativity to happen. So the creative songwriting process is an interesting one. It involves inspiration, ideation, experimentation, and then refinement. And each steps of this process, he's been using AI to guide the lyric writing, the melody creation, the arrangement, and the polishing, which is really interesting. And I think it's interesting to share this because I think it's the constraints and the difficulties that compel us to think differently, fostering the sense of innovation that's important for the creative problem solving to evolve. So we've got this creativity, and we've also got the power of AI. And Reid Hoffman used to say that artificial intelligence was both this thing that people debated, it should be limited or it should be accelerated. And I've been exploring it also in the field of cybersecurity, particularly with Microsoft's security Copilot service, and with my role previously at Avanade, we actually did quite a lot to embed that service to support an organisation of 60,000 people with some very interesting outcomes, particularly on the quality of life for security analysts. Previous to Avanade, I was managing a security operations capability supporting 20 Australian customers, and I saw the impact of high workload and how that reflected in burnout, and having many young people enter cybersecurity, work as an analyst, and actually leave the industry within 12 or 18 months due to the fatigue of that kind of work. So it was quite interesting to kind of work more closely embedding security Copilot into operations to see what the benefit was to help junior analysts solve problems related to security faster, by actually being a dashboard in front of multiple other systems that connect in. So it's a dashboard in front of the Microsoft Defender, Entra, Intune products, and you can use the LLM capability, which is the natural language capability, to ask about an incident that's present in the security incident and event management system, and then correlate all of the data and actually resolve the problem. So what's really interesting is when we started to map what a security incident looked like, particularly a ransomware investigation, and we ran through the analysis of that manual investigation, we saw that it was actually about a 3-hour piece of work that was required, firstly to understand the alerts and the severity, then to look at the impact of the incident across the organisation, then to understand the commands that have been executed, and then to look at all of the signs within that environment, which probably could take from 1 hour to 3 hours, depending on the skills and depending on the complexity of the attack, looking for signs of privilege escalation, lateral movement and data exfiltration, putting together a remediation plan, updating other ticketing services, and then notifying users and closing the case down. With the assistance of tools, we were able to get that 3-hour investigation to 30 minutes, and in some cases we could get it down to as many as 6 minutes, depending on the organisation's appetite for logic apps, which were like these tiny little warheads on the end of the core automation capability, which is really interesting. So I'll take you through a demo now of that in action, and I'll try and run the demo from about halfway. If you have if someone clicks on a malicious URL, what are the first things you think are really important? If we can tease them out, I'll only need to run kind of half the video. So what's the first thing that happens if someone clicks on a URL and you're trying to stop that affecting the rest of the organisation? What's the first thing you do? You could try and do that. You might actually want to block the URL that they've clicked on if you know what it is. So the first thing you might do is kind of find the AOC for that, block that. You might want to actually disable the user as the next step, which is really important. So you take them offline, similar to this, get them off the network. You then might want to actually run something on the PC to actually understand what kind of malicious code was on it. So each of those steps can then be run as a prompt book, which replaces a playbook for how to deal with a ransomware investigation. So this is a video produced by Vannessa, and I'll take this now and run it from the fact that we assume that we've done the first bit of work, which will take us to about the midpoint of this video. So we're in the Sentinel, Microsoft Sentinel tools. We've identified there's been a malicious URL that's been clicked on. We've taken that particular person, we've disabled them in an intra or active directory. We've then isolated their machine. And then the next step, which I think is the part that generative AI really shines for cybersecurity, is around the malicious code analysis. Now this is going to try and take it from the beginning, so I'll just drag that back to here. There we go. So here we go. We've got this now, and I'll talk to this. So we've got this running now, and this is the front end of Microsoft Copilot. It's actually now running an AV scan on the actual device, which is the endpoint. And as it does that, it will actually then feed back and update the Sentinel log. So we've got a front end AI working with the back end systems, and we'll then part of the next thing is to actually now, we've done the level 1, kind of we know what's happening. We'll now raise this ticket to level 2 or 3, which is around doing some threat hunting to find out who attacked me and with what. So we actually do some analysis on the URL. We find it's a metapreter post-exploitation attack. It's a fairly nasty attack. And this is where the AI is really shining, is its ability to actually analyse the malicious code within the environment. And it will also help us map this to MITRE. So we'll have a look at what techniques have been used. We know it's reasonably severe. The ability to generate these images is really great. It allows us to sort of see visually what the attack is. We're mapping it now to the MITRE attack, and we'll see that there's a couple of techniques that have been used. One is process injection, and the second one is a spear phishing link has been clicked on. So we know that they're the footprints of the attack. This will now generate a bit of a story visual, which is really helpful, because if you've ever had to explain to someone what's going on within an environment, this is a beautiful visual that you could take to an executive to say, look, this is the map of the attack and the analysis of the attack. And then once you've got the analysis of the attack and all of the footprints, you can then start to put in place the right level of remediation in the plan. So it's still running through this analysis. Generally, this could take an hour to 3 hours. I've seen one person kind of work on malicious code analysis for up to 2 or 3 days. So being able to actually get the generative AI capabilities to bring this in, to do it at pace, has been really valuable. Now, we know what kind of malicious code it is. We can now block and isolate the machine, which is really important. And that response capability is really important, because a lot of the great security tools do the visualization and do the detection, but the ability to actually go that next step forward and isolate and respond is the area that I think the new security tools are really starting to shine. So here we've got the visual being created. We've got that being then added back into Sentinel. So we've got like a list of everything that has happened on the case and a response. And then this visual that will then become really helpful to put into a executive level summary. And you'll see the executive summary now. We've got the incident, we've got the mean time to detect, mean time to respond. We've got the MITRE attack techniques that have been used. And you can see that that can then all be exported, put into a Word document, and then sent through to somebody like an executive as a report, there's a tiny bit of a hallucination happening there, so that gets checked over by, that's the human AI kind of collaboration, that gets checked over and then resolved. But it's a really interesting application. So Avanade deployed this at scale, and then they did the qualitative research to find out if people actually wanted to continue using that kind of technology, and all of the analysts who'd used the technology said absolutely. 86% of them said once we've used this new technology, we actually don't want to work in that manual way again. I think with cybersecurity, we need both the manual skills, but we also need the power of the AI, because we're actually fighting AI-driven attacks. We need to have that speed and capability to meet the velocity of what's going on in the industry. So we've seen that generative AI is really helpful for helping with security operations. But the other thing from a cybersecurity point of view that I've got an interest in is how do we actually make sure the models that organisations are using for AI are also secure. And this is one of the things that I'm working with the Fortescue team is for the models that have been built. How do we make sure that they are also secure? And I'm reminded of that quote that said, the invention of the ship was also the invention of the shipwreck. And this is the shipwreck of issues that also now need to be addressed from an organisational point of view when there's large AI models that start to be used at an enterprise level, particularly those that are not bought off the shelf, but those that are actually built when you build your own AI models themselves. And it poses that question, why is it so hard? And what is so hard about securing an AI model? But it starts with this idea that the AI models themselves, unlike applications, have models built into the way that they work. So they have their own inherently unpredictable and non-deterministic way of working. So in other words, we're securing these systems that might be acting autonomously and in a way that we can't always fully predict. And that's a really different way that we've been working in security. We've been able to pretty much do a lot more predictive work in traditional cybersecurity, but when we start thinking about securing an AI model, there's a whole different set of issues that start to come up. So I'm actually working and looking at a solution at the moment called AI Defence. That's actually going to help us look across the solutions that have been created and actually give us visibility right across the organisation where we see AI being used, not only AI that's enterprise AI, but also shadow AI. And then we also start to get visibility of some of the fallout from some of the things that can happen with AI, and it actually allow us to protect PII data, which is private data, and actually put controls just in time to suppress that data being released, which is really interesting. It's not enough to regulate after harm. We need frameworks that anticipate the misuse before it happens. And that's where the AI leadership becomes really important. So some of the attacks that we're seeing, privacy is really key to ensure that sensitive data isn't disclosed. Model theft is another one, and so is meta prompt extraction is really important. We've got supply chain attacks, which could affect the infrastructure. We've got model compromise and training data poisoning. Which is really concerning because as these models get used more and more, there's the possibility that if they are manipulated and we're using them for many mission critical parts of the organisation, the stakes actually get bigger if the data in the underlying model gets poisoned, and so that's something really critical. And then we've got all of the safety concerns around bias and toxicity. So we know that the AI models and the way that they're built is really a scraping of everything that's available on the internet. So we do get the biased and stereotypical kind of offensive things also collected in the way that AI works. So that needs to be kind of managed and trained into the models. And then similarly, we've seen that manifest itself in some really serious attack for chatbots. The Microsoft's Tay back in 2016 was an example of that happening. But it's happened even more recently with other chatbots, which shows to us, which the Blender bot also showed that happened in recent times, that if the AI isn't trained properly, then it can actually change the way that it's relating, and it can be more harmful than it was ever intended. The other big issue to manage for is copyright and IP concerns. So the generative AI models are trained on vast amounts of existing content from text, images and code, but who actually owns the stuff that's created? And are we inadvertently plagiarising those models with the stuff that's then created? So we're seeing some fairly interesting cases in the headlines at the moment around the 12 million Getty photos that were used to train a number of different models, and that's playing out. So these are the new issues which are different to the set of standard cybersecurity issues that we've dealt with previously, and the most concerning, I think, is really the issues around ethics and the societal impact of AI. So we need to ask the big questions: how might generative AI impact jobs? Are we comfortable that it might mimic human style as well? Will it dilute our human creativity, or will we actually become overly reliant on generative AI in the roles that we do? And how do we ensure that we have AI accountability and leadership in the organisations that we're leading? And many organisations and governments are trying to solve that responsible AI and leadership question. Some of it can be regulated, but some of it also needs to also be, we have some guardrails around the models when they're built to protect them as well. So both things need to happen. It's certainly been a very interesting field to explore. And the final video I wanted to play was really around the role in AI, particularly in allied health, and what it can actually do to transform people's lives. And if we get the AI working well with actually solving some of those problems that appear to be unsolvable without it, we get that really interesting symbiotic relationship between AI and human collaboration. I heard Dr. Jordan Yugan speak recently at a cyber conference, and it's a really good example, this last video, of answering that question: what will we build and who will we build it for and why? We all understand the what, but we need to sort of, I think this is a great example of what are we building, who are we building it for, and that synthesis between AI and human collaboration. This video is taken from the project and describes the work that Dr. Jordan did with 12-year-old Riley, and I think what it captures at the end is that kind of incredible joy that happens when we get this technology kind of working for those unsolvable kind of problems.
Jordan to explore ways he could give the paralysed or disabled more freedom. So he invented a mind-controlled wheelchair.
You wear a headband, it picks up the electrical signals of the brain, you send those into a computer, and then you can connect it to the computer where you are now controlling that computer. If that computer can control the wheelchair, then you've got a bridge between you and the motors on the vehicle.
How can you top that? Well, how about this eye-controlled computer game?
Smashing it! Smashing it! That wall came out of nowhere. Riley was born with cerebral palsy. It affects his movements and his ability to speak, but he's a brilliant young guy. He doesn't let anything hold him back.
Jordan's super tech company, Psykinetic, wanted to help Riley achieve the previously unachievable.
If you could do anything with this technology that we're going to make, what would you do?
I want to drive a car.
You want to drive a car?
Yeah.
I wanted him to be in complete control. And so we thought, how do we do this? If he's connecting with the world through his eyes, why don't we harness that? It's called electrooculography, EOG. Whenever you move your eyes, your brain sends electrical signals to the little muscles that push and pull your eyes. Track my hand, center, up, center. See, we can see a change in your eye signals. If we're able to work out which signals you're doing each time, we're going to be able to control anything.
With the help of this nifty headband, Riley was able to turn on lights.
There we go.
But then the team decided to crank things up a notch.
You know how you said you wanted to drive a car? So, it might not be a car, but I think it's a little bit better. What do you reckon? Yeah? You want to give that a go? He just made this perfect run all the way through. He darted left, right, round these different obstacles, and then just shot it through the finish line. It was just the most incredible experience of our lives. Drove a car. Oh my god. We got it.
This is such a great moment of that amazing ability to harness the capability of AI to meet human need and also to innovate through the process of working out what the need is you're solving and then innovating to solve that iteratively. So it's really cool.
Jordan to
So my final thoughts comes from the World Economic Forum that AI generates patterns, but it's the creativity that's the spark that drives the transformation in the projects that we do. And I'm very hopeful for the technology, particularly its ability to address some of humanity's greatest challenges. And AI may be a product of our human invention. But its impact will be shaped by human intention. So AI is not a deterministic force, but a reflection of our choices and our values. And with creativity and inclusivity and collaboration and commitment to ethics, we've got the power to shape a future where AI enhances our shared humanity. And that's the message I wanted to showcase, was some of the amazing projects and how it is actually enabling us in medical research, in sustainability for agriculture, in mining and operations, in cyber security, in allied health, but also raising some of the cyber security challenges that it also poses as AI goes from the adoption of individuals to enterprises as well, and the sorts of things that the leadership around AI governance needs to think about in the future. Thanks for listening.